Hey everybody, something a little different today. This isn't World of Tanks, although it does involve tanks. This was probably one of the first games involving tanks that I actually played, the other being M1 Tank Platoon 2. This is Thunder Brigade, or at least a demo for it. This is a very obscure game. It's quite difficult to find anything on the internet about it. It was released in 1998. Developed by Blue Moon Interactive, a small Estonian company, and published by Interactive Magic. The game didn't do too well commercially. A couple of reasons. I mean, partly because it was, as it still is, quite obscure, and also it wasn't quite what it could have been. There are a lot of setbacks that Blue Moon went through, which resulted in the game coming out quite polished. It runs smoothly, it ran smoothly even on the technology of the day, and it looks good, again by 1998 standards, but the gameplay doesn't have a huge amount of depth to it, and there's not really that much content in the game. So it had a lot of potential, but I guess in the end it just didn't live up to it. Either way, it's still some fun to play, and it brings back happy memories. I've never actually played the full game, funnily enough. Like I said, it is obscure, it's difficult to find. My memories of playing Thunder Brigade actually come from a demo which was included on disc one of my flight sims came on. I can't remember exactly which one it was. I think it may have been European Air War or Eurofighter 2000. The story being, when I was about 10 years old, maybe 11 years old, my parents, who usually didn't actually buy me very many computer games, got me a 4-pack of European Air War, which is still one of my favourite games, EF 2000, F-22, Air Dominance Fighter, and I think the last game was Falcon 4.0. I mean, those are pretty big names as far as late 90s, early 2000s flight sims go. And at the time that I got them, they were still actually fairly new. On one of the discs, like I said, I think it was European Air War, there were a series of demos. One was this game. There was also a full version of North vs. South, which is another game I was playing a lot of. But this is around the time I was in 5th or 6th grade. I had a major assignment. It was a book report or something. It ended up taking me a lot longer than it should have. And my sort of resounding memory of that period was just playing Thunder Brigade, North vs. South, F-22 and European Air War instead of actually doing anything and tabbing out whenever my parents walked into the room. It's been about 11 or 12 years since I've even seen this game. I actually got talking to a friend about gaming nostalgia just last night, and that kind of compelled me to do a bit of looking around. I found Blue Moon's site where they still have a download for the Thunder Brigade demo, which is what we're looking at right now. So, with a little bit of background out of the way, let's actually try this game out. I'm going to run through the instant action. The campaign can run a bit long. The instant action is a better demonstration of what's actually in the game. Just before I do, actually, a bit of backstory. The game is about hovertanks. There is an actual storyline. You're part of a sort of uprising rebel force against the oppressive galactic empire. You do have access to all kinds of advanced military equipment, so you're pretty well equipped for rebels, but I won't question it, I guess. But it does go into quite some depth about which star systems these guys control and how you got there in the first place. I can't remember the exact storyline because I never played through the full campaign, but just to sort of let you know that there is actually a storyline. It is somewhat coherent. Anyway, let's dive into the instant action. Obviously the graphics aren't all that because this is a very, very old game. You can't change the res, it's locked at 640 by 480. Now one thing you may immediately notice is the terrain. This game has really, really good looking terrain for 1998. I mean shit, this would be good looking terrain for now. I'm not quite sure how they made the terrain look this detailed, again with 1998 technology, but they did. I believe that was actually the starting feature of the game and they sort of added the tanks around that. So as you can see, we are indeed in a tank that hovers. We have missiles and a railgun. In the instant action, your ammunition is unlimited. So all you have to worry about is just the charge of your tank. If you run down the charge meter, which is on the far right of the screen, your electrical based weapons, say the railgun, won't work. You have to wait for the recharge. So there's our little buddy over there, our platoon mate. On sensors you have active and passive mode. Passive will tell you that something is near you with its own sensors turned on. Active will tell you actually what is there. Passive won't pick up things like stealth tanks or tanks with their sensors turned off. Active will pick up everything in range, but it'll also alert the enemies to the fact that they're ow. So if I can just hold off the waves of guys assaulting our base for a moment, I'll explain a bit more of the HUD and some more of the gameplay elements. I may as well begin explaining some of the tank types. The little guys that look like turtles are strifers. They're stealth tanks. That's why they're very difficult to get a missile lock on. You'll notice I actually can't get a missile lock on them unless they've been sitting in front of my view for quite some time. There are various sort of vehicles and installations in the game. There is a third-person mode. I'm flying a BCC 110 Talon, which is the sort of main rebel tank. There was a clause hanging around. It's a slightly bigger version of this. It has twin guns and carries mines. I think it has a laser designated too. Another guy, another customer, we'll go deal with him and then I'll explain the HUD elements. Some of these tanks can, yeah, he's lasing that for the enemy missiles to get rid of him. And it's too late. So what he was doing was laser designating our base. The Talon can't do this. I believe the claws can. There's another very heavy tank that the unit get, which I can't remember the name of. It looks like the claws except bigger. It also gets a laser. Actually, I think you can play it in campaign, so I might run just or cut on a brief clip from the campaign to demonstrate it. Alright. Oh, for Christ's sake, not again. I'm just going to have to explain the HUD on the go. Obviously you have a crosshair in the center of the screen, just a standard fixed static crosshair. It doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't move when you shoot, it doesn't do any of that fun stuff. This is 1998. Down the bottom left of your screen you have your sensors. They tell you where things are. Tab to switch active and passive mode. You do have a compass. The blue line is north, the red line is south. Map, press M, and here we go. You can see there's like a fog of war. That's my own sensor range, that's my buddy's sensor range. If our base was still up, that would have a sensor range too. These are known enemy listening stations. As you actually spot installations, they will appear on the map in grey. If you're still in actual visual range of them, they appear on the map in red. As you can see, the mini-map actually or not the mini-map, rather, the full map actually has a little picture-in-picture screen, so you can still see what's going on even while you're in the map. Sorry, I just bumped my mic. So you can avoid driving into things or getting ambushed by enemies. Actually a really, really handy idea you don't see in games anymore, and oh dearie me, we're getting shot at. After a while you get used to the distinct sounds of these things. These are strifers. Strifers have a really high rate of fire gun. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but it fires very quickly. The Charons, which are the main enemy battle tanks, are a bit bigger. They're the ones with the big goofy looking fin above the gun. They fire much slower, but they carry a lot more weaponry. Their gun's a lot more powerful. So we'll clean this guy up and then continue. This is a throttler, this is a heavy tank. About equivalent to our claws, who is down here wrecking something with missiles. The missiles do in fact lock. You can fire them dumbfire. They won't lock on structures, but they do lock on tanks. When you see the sort of three circular Jesus Christ, they're really going for us. When you see the three circular things appear around it, that means it's locked. Of course, we're not going to see it here because this is a strifer and then absolutely notoriously hard to lock up. You can bump into things. You can also strafe over and under things. If I can just get my gun to there, my arrow keys are a little sticky. So you can see he was in the middle of our field of view at point blank range for a while. Eventually it did lock him. This one, it locked straight away. I think if they're in active sensors, you can lock them, but if they're in passive, good luck. Of course, you can fire the missiles dumbfire and they will still work, but it's better to wait for a lock. That is a lot of tanks. So you can strafe by holding Alt and then using the arrow keys. The controls are A to accelerate, Z to go backwards, and then the arrow keys control the direction of your tank. These tanks are essentially assault guns. They don't have turrets whatsoever. You have to turn the whole tank to engage a target. So that was a dumb fire right there, and we locked him right afterwards. And this guy is pretty much fucked. I can't deal with that many strikers at once. I'm gonna have to back out. As you can see, when I take hits, the little indicator on the bottom right of my screen changes. That's my status indicator. It shows armor and subsystems. Armor plates will, on these tanks, recharge. The enemy tanks, most of them don't recharge their armor. I think a couple of types do. So essentially it's regenerating health, but it's done a lot more sensibly than modern regenerating health. The armor plates will become depleted after they take enough damage, and then they take a considerable amount of time to actually come back and recharge. It's quicker to recharge armor than to replace it entirely. The game actually does have its own little encyclopedia function, which when you're in mission briefings you can click on a name if it's bolded and colored differently, and it will actually take you to a little encyclopedia entry for the unit or planet or whatever it's describing, with a little rotating 3D view. And it will give you the specifications on all these different tanks, whether they have active or passive armor, what their weapons are, so on and so forth. Okay, now we finally have a moment of peace. Let's look at the HUD. On the left here, we have our speed, ground speed. On the right, that's our energy. That recharges constantly as long as the power plant, this U-shaped thing, is intact. And that's what we use to repair armor and fire our railgun. This is the ammo indicator for the current weapon. So railgun, missiles. As tanks get more weapons, say the claws or the other one I can't remember the name of for the life of me, more indicators come under here. It looks a bit like a tree. Here we have our status. So this is our rear armor, side armor, both sides, and front armor. This is our sensor. If that gets knocked out, we're blind. We can't see anything on here, it just defaults to passive mode. This is our actual engine. If that gets knocked out, you won't be recharging. If that gets knocked out, you won't be moving. Like I said, we have our mini-map here. Of course, you do have mouse control, so you can click HUD elements or you can use the hotkeys. Here's our map again. Our little buddy's still alive. Our base is unfortunately not. You can zoom in and out. Now, these maps are quite decent sized. And look at the detail on the terrain. All those ruts and bumps on the mini-map are actually present in game. So, now we've gone over the HUD. Oh, and sorry, there's a little thing up here as well. This is your options menu. You just need to mouse over the top of the screen. Anyway, let's continue. You can also control with joystick or by holding the mouse right button, I think it is, and using the mouse to control where your tank looks and then clicking to fire. And here we have some more customers. Probably strifers. They are by far the most common enemy. A couple of charons in there as well. Charons and strifers can both lay mines, which you really need to watch out for if you're going to try and chase them. Railguns are the thing that make the sort of the hissing noise. The missiles make a pretty obvious noise, you know they're missiles, but mine laying makes kind of a weird springy metallic noise. Hear that? Don't follow this one. The mines are quite small and difficult to see. Probably something to do with the low resolution the game runs at. So, actually here for instance, I am strafing up by holding Alt and my up arrow. I can also strafe left and right, but obviously because the logistics of holding the accelerate, decelerate keys and Alt and an arrow key at the same time, I tend not to use it. It's just a pain in the arse. As you can see, it's actually quite hard to maintain fire as we have to recharge our power plant. It's good to have a buddy around. Now, just pop to third person again. This is a weapons bunker. This is going to shoot at us. It's basically twin railguns on a tower. So we want to deal with him quick smart. Like I said, missiles don't want to lock on this guy, but you can just dump fire them from range and take it out. In the instant action, there are about 60-something installations and quite a large number of tanks as well. 30-something installations, about 60-something tanks spread all around the map for you to destroy. The campaign obviously has set objectives, but the instant action has just shit everywhere for you to go and shoot up. And as I said before, you do also have infinite ammunition in the instant action mode. Or at least in the demo you do. I don't know if you still do in the full game. Now, the other thing that actually really surprises me about the terrain is how far it renders. Now, I'm going to probably be saying this a lot, but remember, this is a game from 1998. Most games in 1998 were lucky if they had flat, featureless terrain that rendered more than a couple hundred meters. This game has actual fully deformed, like, ruts and ridges kind of terrain. I mean, and it renders for quite a distance. That's about 500 meters, I'd imagine. I'm not sure what technique they used to actually build this terrain or how it's rendering, but I mean, it impressed me then, it still impresses me. It's still uncommon to find terrain this detailed in any game. I mean, sure, like I said, this is running 640 by 480 on a modern computer. This was state-of-the-art in 1998, but this is still impressive. I mean, the day when Arma has terrain as detailed as this, I'll be impressed. It also changes color a lot. You may have noticed that as I float around the map. That's the other really nice thing about this game, is the terrain isn't just good looking, it's varied. there aren't trees or rocks or anything. I'm guessing that's probably part of the planned things that never happened just because of all the bugs they had to iron out. But even without features like trees and rocks, the terrain is still quite impressive, and it still does look quite pretty. It's very mountainous. Most of the maps in the game, there are a couple included in the demo because of the campaign. Most of the terrain is quite mountainous. There are a few flat plains, but they like to show off their technology, so lots of mountains, lots of valleys. I'm gonna have to deal with these two. As I said before, strifers are by and large the main enemy to come up against. They're stealth tanks, they're quite small and fast in the light, they're hard to detect, they're hard to lock, but you know, you can deal with them quite easily because they don't have regenerating armor and they don't stand up to hits very well. So, we've taken out 2 weapons bunkers. That's a sensor tower. It's best to take these out from a distance. If you get too close, you'll get hemmed in and hit on all sides by larger guns than your own, put it that way. I'm actually above a river right now, just in case you can't tell from the low res. The water is animated, but it doesn't seem to form actual ripples or waves or anything. So if we move back in this way, you can see the terrain changing colour. It's sort of, it was whitish grey at our base, like snow-capped mountains, then it was sort of verdant fields. Now we're moving into a more bluey green area. If I crest the hill just up here, you should see a swamp. And if I head towards my southeast, there's actually a rather large plain, a plateau. So I'll just quickly check out the swamp. This probably will end up being quite a long video. I would prefer to keep it short, but at the same time I'd like to actually show off as much of this as I can. And, you know, my tank only goes so fast. So here's the swamp. This is pretty big. It runs all the way through the northeast corner of the map, as you can see. And yeah, this is it. Now if you could just imagine this thing having reeds and willows and things, like I would imagine the devs were planning before they had to rush the game out. Imagine that in a 1998 game. If anybody, by the way, actually does know what kind of technology went into this terrain, I would love to hear it. Because I don't have a clue. It looks too real to be parallax mapping, I think. It's certainly not normal mapping. But at the same time, I can't believe it would actually all be fully 3D modeled. Because I don't see how computers at the time could run that real time and not explode. So here we're in sort of like a desert area. And there is actually an enemy base around here somewhere. This is also one of the games, there it is, one of the games that first got me into modding. This, Red Alert 1, and what was the other game? Oh, Combat Flight Simulator, the original one. Those were the first games I modded using Notepad. I started doing that when I was about 11, 12 years old. Right as I was starting high school was when I first started modding games. And this was one of them because you could open these world files in Notepad and very easily change the positions of things, add units, remove units, disclose their position on the map, which is why the sensors were lit and none of this stuff was. The sensors have a variable set in the mission file, disclose location, and that shows you where they are at all times. You can also put that on tanks, if I recall correctly, which is what I used to do, just to save myself having to hunt around the corners of the map. Like I said, I was playing this when I should have been doing assignments. I had to tab in and out constantly to avoid getting busted, so the less time I spent flying around looking for stuff, the happier I was. Some structures, like this tank depot, are actually made up of a group of smaller structures, and you have to take each part out to actually destroy it. And I'm about sick of your shit, Mr. Weapons Bunker. So that's this base dealt with. We will head towards the southwest and find another one. Looks like our little buddy there isn't straying very far from the river. So far we've mostly been coming across sensor towers and weapons bunkers, a couple of tank depots. There are some more structures as well that we will see when we get to the main enemy base. I think there's a Halon transport there, and they also, it was a command center right there as well, so you've seen one of those, but they have another one of those. They also have missile bunkers, which were what blew up our base earlier. Now what those do is a tank with a laser designator marks a target and those will automatically fire at it. We had a couple too until they got exploded. Heading back into the more green river valleys here. As we head into these mountains, they actually turn purple. In the campaign there are various worlds. This map is used a couple times in the campaign. There's another one which is basically the moon. It's all grey and very crater marked. So here we go. Look at this. This is quite pretty, honestly. I mean, it's pixelated and kind of blurry at this res, playing it on a PC that runs at 1920 by 1080 natively, or a monitor rather, but it's still quite nice, very colourful. We can check the status of our quick action here. So this tells you actually how much each side has of what. Here we have disclose, regeneration. So if we had that turned on, the enemy would actually have respawning tanks. The Halon have one launcher. We had 3. We now have none. They got blown up. You see that most of the tanks in this mission are stealth. There's only 12 battle tanks. The stealth tanks are strifers, battle tanks Charon, 11 heavy tanks, which are the throttlers. No annihilators, which are the demolisher tanks. They look kind of like a throttler, except bigger and angrier. We can go to more here, and here we go. We've destroyed 3 of 5 of our objectives. We've destroyed actually all their tanks now, and all we have left is this group of installations down here. So get on with it, take these out, and then I'll do a quick tour back towards our initial base. Because there's some other terrain up there. It's more mountain or sort of more snow-capped peak type deal, and there's a lot of craters around too. So our buddy here's finally pulled his finger out and started heading towards the enemy. One of the things I used to do when I modded this was adding in whole new bases as well and setting them in random places around the map. I also used to add groups of tanks. I'd change my own tanks to a Claws or the other big one, which I still can't remember the name of to save my life. I think the Claws is a heavy tank, and then the other one's the Demolisher tank. You do get to play it in a single player campaign, I'm pretty sure. Single player also has other factions. If you watch other people's YouTube videos showing snippets of the single player, you'll see blue guys floating around using a mix of tanks. I'm not sure what their deal is. Like I said, I never got a chance to play the actual full game. Hopefully one day. So there goes their command center. And mission accomplished. But I'm not going to press the finish button just yet. I just want to float around a bit more and show a bit more of the game. Once you've accomplished your mission, you can still fly around, and at any time you can hit the finish mission button. So that's what a sensor tower looks like when it's not blown up. That's what it looks like when it is blown up. There are a couple more weapons towers over there to deal with. I think those should be the last couple buildings on the map. I'll just have to check afterwards, confirm it with the summary, but I'm pretty sure that those are the last few. Depending how I'm going for hard drive space and time, I might briefly show some of the campaign. I might even just add in some snippets in, just short clips at the end of this video. If you've been watching any of my videos any of my previous videos, you probably realize I'm lacking in the editing software department. About the best I can do is chop clips in with VDub. VDub, I'm sure, is a very potent tool, but you have to be severely autistic to actually know how to use it. Its interface is not the most user-friendly thing ever. And so the limit of my capability with it is literally just chopping and changing clips and then rendering videos. I used to use Windows Movie Maker because that gave me a little more flexibility, but the quality was crap. I have it on decent authority that more recent versions of Movie Maker give you better quality, but I haven't got around to trying any yet. Take a little tour over here. As the terrain heads back down towards the river, the mountains change back from sort of this purpley bluey colour down to turquoise and then cream. You can actually see the colour of the terrain on the map as well as you look at the area within your own sensor range. As you've probably noticed, the tanks have absolutely no terrain problems whatsoever. They can climb over basically anything. I think they can even climb up cliffs. As long as it's not literally vertical, they can find a way to get over it. They also tend to maintain speed no matter what they're flying over as well. There are a couple of other people on YouTube who have uploaded videos of this game. Only a few. As I've mentioned, it was an obscure game. It didn't release to commercial success. It does have, I'm not going to say a cult following, because I think that means, I think that requires rather a larger following to be classified as a cult. But it does have a small and dedicated fan base. Mostly people like myself who grew up playing this game and either still play it to this day or have fond memories of playing it as kids. So this is a terrain more towards our original base. These mountains are slightly more traditional colour than the other ones. They're not purple, they're just grey and brown and white. So this was once our base. We had a space transport and a tank depot. It was our initial landing site. We did have some launches as well, but I think they were based somewhere else. When I modded this, I used to give my own base a lot more stuff as well. We'd have launches and tanks that could lay stuff, and we'd go around wrecking shit. It was actually quite a lot of fun. It's surprising how much playtime you could get out of the demo just by modding the existing skirmish incident action mission. So this used to be a Halon base. This was what our missile launchers were firing at the start, presumably. There is friendly fire in this, by the way, so you can team damage tanks. One last crater over here. I think there were Halon bases in each crater, if I recall correctly. like I said, it's been about 11 or 12 years since I've touched this game, so forgive me if my memory is a little hazy. Nope, this crater is empty. I think we'll just stop here and take a check, make sure we've actually destroyed everything. I'm pretty sure we have. Yep, 30 of 30 installations destroyed, 65 tanks destroyed, and all 5 objectives in about half an hour. Wow, this video has been running for a while. Anyway, let's end the instant action there, and I'll consider clipping in some campaign stuff. If I don't, then maybe I'll make later videos, who knows. Actually, yeah, that's what I'll do. If you want to see more of this game, let me know, and I will upload the demo's campaign missions separately, so you can actually see them in full rather than just me chopping up bits of them. Anyway, thanks for watching, and if you want to try this out for yourself, there should be a link to the developer's site in the description, and at the bottom of their history page about Thunder Brigade they actually have a download link for the demo. It's really small, it's only like 13 megabytes or something. As for the full game, I'm not sure where you could find it. I'm sure it's the internet, you'll find it somewhere, but as far as actual legit copies go, I'm not sure where you'll find it. Maybe eBay if you're lucky, or some vintage gaming site, but it would be probably one of the harder games to find just because it didn't sell real well, and not a lot of people know about it. But I hope you enjoy what you've seen, and yeah, I'll be back to non-floating tanks videos very shortly. Thanks.